Watching US President Joe Biden today, I felt sick. The free world is threatened by Russia, by China too, and is crying out for a strong leader. A Churchill, a Thatcher, a Reagan, an Eisenhower, someone like that. But today, US President Joe Biden stepped up for his big moment, the annual State of the Union address, in front of all the politicians, all the Supreme Court judges, all his top military, the might of America. And dear God. Now, it's true, I don't like Biden, I don't trust him, I think he's weak, but the threats today are so great, Ukraine in particular. I really wanted him to succeed. We all need that. But instead of strength, we got the stumbles of a feeble man. And not just, signs of decaying intellect, stumbles, silly ones like this.
You can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases.
Even in the biggest moments, that big rah-rah for the Ukrainians that we're desperate for, Biden even called them Iranians instead.
Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people.
Now, I did like some of the sentiments, of course, like this.
He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
But what did Joe Biden today actually offer Ukraine on top of the sanctions so far? Very little. Yes, United States airspace is now going to be closed to Russian planes and more oligarchs are going to be targeted. But none of that's going to stop Russia from smashing Kiev, killing its president, and then subjecting Ukraine to a rule by tyranny. There's no mention, for instance, of the agonizing option of closing Ukrainian airspace, the US and NATO, which is the one thing that would help. It would save Ukraine from Russian bombing for a start and from it dropping paratroopers, as it's now doing around some cities. And Ukraine is begging for this. The president again today, close this airspace, help us like that. Now, look, I get it. People are suggesting this option far too lightly. As if it's no big deal for the US and the European allies to shoot down Russian jets themselves and very likely risk starting World War III with catastrophic losses. That's too easy to suggest. But we also have to debate, has World War III started already? If Putin takes Ukraine, who's next? And look at China. If we let Putin take Ukraine, even at this great cost, will China think that's still a green light for it to invade Taiwan? Who's going to stop China if it couldn't even stop Russia? In fact, a lot of Biden's speech today was him defending or pushing his stalled domestic politics. He's got so little done. It was another sign of weakness. And the response to that part of the speech was just lukewarm. And so at the very end, Joe Biden tried to amp up the energy, finish on a big high, by simply shouting like an angry man, a grab bag of slogans.
So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is this: the State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Go get him? Get who? Putin? I mean, that would be something. Look, maybe I'm too negative. So joining me is Sky News US correspondent Annelise Nielsen. Annelise, too much of that speech, to me, showed not America's strength, but Biden's weakness. Is that how you saw it?
I felt like I was watching the campaign speech we never got to see during the election because we saw President Biden just avoid any kind of campaigning, and I think that had a large bit to do with the fact he got into the White House. But today was really an opportunity to try to go over the achievements of the last year, and I think there was some tacit acknowledgement in that there wasn't much to crow about. He spoke about the pandemic, and he spoke about saying that we need to get kids back to school. That's all well and good, but this has been a long time coming. And then you talk about the year ahead, and what I thought was really notable is he put in some really small-term goals for his unity agenda, things that most people agree on and that Congress could get its act together to pass in that time frame before midterms if it wants to. That's going to be a lot down to how they manoeuvre the Congress. But what was also notable, we didn't hear much about climate change, and that's already starting to raise the ire of the progressive Democrats. The left, they're doing their own right of reply speech, which is normally reserved for the other side, which the Republicans have done already. And so that's quite extraordinary in itself, just exemplary of how divided things are. And I didn't hear a lot in that was going to unite them beyond the universal support for Ukraine.
Well, talking about that, I just wonder what the Ukrainians would have taken out of it, because there wasn't much that they were given apart from the no-fly zone for Russian planes, but in America, not over Ukraine. And also, we're going to go over after the oligarchs, he said. But, that's all very good, but it's nothing decisive on top of the sanctions announced already. Plus, there was that projection of weakness, the verbal slips. I've shown the one where he called Ukrainians Iranians instead, but there were so many. What did you make of them?
Well, OK, with the sanctions, you're absolutely right. They haven't gone that far, and they don't want to go any further for anything that's going to compromise oil production. And this is where the Biden administration is completely wedged. They don't want to go into traditional fossil fuels, and they have nothing to do in the meantime before they want to implement all these long-term climate change strategies. That's great. Petrol is $1 more a gallon than it was this time last year, according to the AAA averages of the nation. That's a problem. We didn't hear much that was going to address that in this speech beyond his plan to address inflation, to say that he was going to increase wages. What we did hear was a number of stumbles, and I said this before, I'll say it again. We have been very deferential about this in the past, but this isn't a one-off. This is a pattern of behaviour, and that deserves calling out. This is a serious issue that goes to his competence to lead, and that's all down to the fact that you need someone who's quick on their feet, and you also need that projection, that image to the world. And if Vladimir Putin had been watching today, he would have had a lot of comfort in some of that performance. In saying that, he was very strong on some of the Ukrainian stuff at the top, and there is that universal support within Congress. But broadly speaking, I think all this does is just bolster the global focus on NATO as being the ones to lead us out of it, not the US. And that has long-term ramifications for America's standing in the world as a leader.
That's absolutely right. And Donald Trump had been completely correct in calling out NATO repeatedly for not doing enough defence, hiding under America's skirts. But look, here's another one of Joe Biden's stumbles today where he lost his train of thought.
First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors that stop doctors from prescribing treatments.
Again, Annelise, I'm talking about a number of stumbles. I'm not picking out the one or two or three examples. There were a number of them. I wonder, that has to shake the confidence of the voters, no matter how good the policies are or aren't.
Yeah, and I mean, he does have a well-documented history with stutters. That is completely forgivable, but this is clearly, especially, as I say, with this pattern of behaviour, well beyond that, and it bears witness to the world and it deserves to be questioned. But when it comes to the general confidence in him. Look at the polling. The average polling has him in the 20s and 30s. That's appallingly low after a first-year presidency. And so much of the goodwill that he came with when he came in was because people were sick of Donald Trump. Even Donald Trump supporters who I talked to that say they would vote for him again were sick of his Twitter, and they were so happy that he was gone, so that was just going to be by the wayside. That can't sustain you through an entire presidency, and we're at that point now. It's been a year, and people want to see action. Things are more expensive. When I was in Florida, I talked to someone outside of CPAC who ran a commercial air conditioning company and had to pick up a second job because the overheads had gotten so expensive. He'd gone from making six figures to then making something like $60,000 a year. And that's huge for someone's cost of living. And that's just one story. It's across the board that cost of living's gotten higher. That wears you down every day. And then when you're watching the global shock of what's happening in Ukraine, your confidence gets even lower.
Annelise Nielsen, thank you so much for your time. Now, look, I should be fair. I thought Joe Biden's speech was bad, but I should point out that other people were mad for it. Let me show you the reaction of Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, third most senior position in US politics. She couldn't wait to applaud anything and everything Biden said. And when she did get her chance, she clapped like one of Stalin's minions, as if her very life depended on showing maximum enthusiasm. Makes you wonder how the US ended up with people like that in charge. No wonder Putin thought he could win this war.